Hello and good morning, everybody. I'm your host, Keenan. Welcome to the January 13th, 2022 weekly DXdao Community Call. Lots of great stuff on the agenda today. We'll be chatting the Discord rep boosts, Carrot campaign retrospectives, some more on the DXdao holiday POAPs, and a bunch more. As usual, we're going to kick it off with some recaps, starting with our beloved Treasury. Would like to invite Dave to the stage here to give a quick recap.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. Well, on the treasury side, what has been happening? So I would say over the past weeks, we've staked some ETH finally. We still have some ETH to stake actually, but gas prices have kind of been abhorrent these past couple of days. So looking for a good opportunity to get around to that. So we still have Stakewise and Rocket Pool, which we want to stake into. These are still, I would say, like test amounts to kind of test the water. We've also been in touch with Stakewise to make sure that, we are able on mainnet to kind of hold these assets because, some of these like Stakewise come in a 2-token model, while others like Lido just rebase. So rebasing, of course, is a lot easier, but we're pretty confident all of them will actually be fine to hold. So we won't need to deploy any relayers or anything to kind of claim any rewards, etc., which is, of course, very important to us to kind of have like a more passive approach, as on mainnet we don't have the ability to do generic multi-calls that easily. We have to whitelist stuff and it all takes a while. And other than that, currently working on kind of like the Q4 treasury report, so kind of looking to give an overview of what we've accomplished and done over the past year, and also looking at the kind of goals for this year. So I think overall, without giving away too many spoilers, last year was really getting a bit kickstarted about how to do treasury proposals, etc. We put a large effort into diversification, which worked out quite well for us. And I think this year, we're very interested in finally starting to get some yield on our assets. Always a bit challenging when you're in a position of DXdao where we kind of want to do it in a as decentralized way as possible. But staking ETH is something we've begun with. I think there are a lot of other opportunities and stuff we can do. In fact, on XDAI as well, or Gnosis chain now, there are also a couple of opportunities which we should even be able to partake in directly through the treasury, through the generic multi-call. So I'm pretty confident we should be able, for example, to provide liquidity on Curve or something like this, or any protocol with no slippage or time stuff involved. So that's something we're working on. And then related to the treasury, of course, we have also the buyback going on. So we're actually about to hit the most recent amount we had sent into the buyback relayer. So let me just open my Google Docs here, but I believe we've purchased back around 4.5. We're already at 4.6 million US dollars total of DXD purchased back, which equates to 1,375 Ether we sold at an average price of 0.159. And actually looking to get an extension proposal up for that, as we're running low on Ether in our Gnosis chain buyback relayer. So that's something we'll probably get up most likely early next week to make sure we can keep cranking out those buyback proposals. And I believe that's pretty much it off the top of my head, unless anyone else has any questions or any specifics.
A couple of thoughts to add. I think Liquidity Protocol might be a good candidate to seek some yield on mainnet. And like you said, we could potentially deposit directly from using the multi-call schemes. Might need a relayer, but my other comment was going to be one of the devs on the Swapper squad actually recently started picking up work on relayers, and so this should give us some additional capabilities to leverage with treasury management. The first goal here and why it's happening in the Swapper squad versus, say, the governance squad is to allow trading directly on Swapper. So, currently there's a liquidity deposit relayer, and so the goal here, the first goal here is to to create a trading relayer so that the Treasury could actually do direct trades on Swapper itself. Now on XDAI with the multi-call there, I think we've done some exchanges on Curve, and I think that works already. Curve, I think you maybe don't have to worry as much about slippage, right? Because it's kind of known. Its sweet spot is the stable pair, the like kind pairs, and it's kind of known for extremely low slippage. So it's sort of a safe move on Curve to make a trade right directly. With something like a Uniswap V2 fork, prices can move with a lot of other tokens, and slippage can be a concern, and that's where the relayer actually becomes important. The relayer, like with the liquidity depositing relayer, is checking the current price at the time of the action, right, of the deposit. And because of the time it takes for governance to happen, right, to reach consensus with voting, you necessarily have some lag between making the proposal and the actual action being taken. So it's impossible to know what the price will be and what the appropriate price target and the slippage around would be when you're making the proposal. So that's why you need this relayer to be checking Oracle prices at the time of deposit, right? So basically this will expand capabilities a bit for Treasury trades and allow direct use of Swapper itself. That's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. I did have a dedicated spot for the buyback, as well as inviting Chris, who made a comment yesterday on kind of the recency of our trading volume and whatnot. I'm not sure, Chris, if you wanted to add to that with the comments you left yesterday. If not, I'm happy to move on here.
You got to bring me up on stage, bro. Just to copy the things I guess I put in the market chatter channel, and then there was actually some additional comments after that I thought I could talk to a little bit. So just in terms of trade volume, this is kind of an important aspect for the buyback, but also kind of DXD liquidity in general. You can see the last month of activity and how it's declined pretty quickly. I mean, I think a lot of this is due to the holidays. There's less trading volume overall during this time, but over the last month, it was only around $75,000 of on-chain volume. You can see there it's primarily split between Swapper, XDAI, Swapper, Arbitrum, and Swapper mainnet, and so that's kind of there. I do think we need to think about DXD liquidity in general and thinking about ways to consolidate it and then increase really the ability for both small and large traders to come in, because right now it's kind of we almost have a Goldilocks problem where we have a kind of a compromise solution across three networks. So be on the lookout for that. I think the things to be thinking of are things like changing the incentive structure in terms of farming campaigns across the networks, potentially interesting, introducing a carrot campaign, particularly one that could lock up liquidity, so that we could have some LPs that maybe have long-term interest in DXdao and DXD be able to lock up their liquidity and get a more enticing reward, and that is a way to increase liquidity. So I think there's that. I think there's increasing the fees on the pools, and then I also think we should be open to the idea of using DXdao liquidity and being a liquidity provider itself on the DXD ETH pair. There were just a couple comments I read right before in terms of the buyback that I wanted to speak to a little bit, and I think Dave can maybe correct me on this Google sheet. So there was a question on what the price is on the Google sheet, and so what's actually pulled is the minimum amount of DXD received. So that's what the order is placed at, which is 3% above the Swapper TWAP time-weighted average price. The Swapper time-weighted average price can actually be manipulated somewhat easily, and typically people that are executing proposals will just go and buy a couple $1,000 worth of DXD right before. So you do see an increase in that. But if you actually look at the buyback orders like execution, a lot of the fills are getting in below that amount because there's a lot of different people, actually, I think around 20 addresses that are participating in the buyback. So some orders will come in like before a proposal is going to be executed, and someone will put an order on Mesa knowing that an order will be executed in 6 hours, and they'll just use the current price of Swapper then. And so sometimes those orders are actually filled at a lower amount there. And so, yeah. And then in terms of like the frequency, just looking over the last month on the sheet, you can see there's been 20 orders over the last 30 days, right? So that's 2 every 3 days. I think that's a pretty healthy pace. I think Dave has been doing a really good job of submitting them and has actually a pretty structured system for it now. And I'm hesitant to kind of shift to another system or introduce more complexity in it, just because I think it is better to have the kind of same structure and consistency. Some of the holdups, in the I guess the 20 orders in 30 days, some of those holdups are because of like normal technical glitches, whether it's with like Gnosis protocol or kind of something else. Sometimes we're just kind of troubleshooting those things. But I'm open to any kind of rewards. I do think this is like an interesting way that even like DXD holders could use Carrot to incentivize different things, whether that's actually for contributors or just like liquidity in general. And then last, I was just looking up, I think the buyback has been going on for a long time, and I think we need to talk. There's a lot of other things we can kind of build off of that foundation, but just to kind of look about where things are and where DXdao sits across the ecosystem. So I think YFI or Yearn is probably the other most prominent buyback. Maybe Gnosis has a similar one, but for YFI, they have bought back $7.5 million of YFI, which is like less than 1% of its circulating supply. So Yearn is about $1.2 billion market cap. Now, so for DXdao has repurchased, as Dave said, about $4.6 million worth of DXD, and that's on a circulating market cap of about like 27 million. So that's like, I think 19% of the circulating supply has been, purchased by DXdao. So in terms of like the ratio compared to DXdao's buyback to YFI's buyback, there's really kind of no comparison. But I think there's lots of things we can do to improve it. I think we need to think about, I think we've done a lot of streamlining in a lot of different ways, but I think a lot of the things that will come in improving it is really about improving DXD liquidity and communicating like the DXD token like more broadly. And I think we can like do that. And that's like a big goal, I think, of governance over the next couple months.
Yeah, just one thing I would add as well is what you said about the minimum DXD is absolutely correct. However, if you are in the sheet and you look at the main page, the overview, the DXD bought back there, listed under XDAI and mainnet, those are actually the exact amounts. So that's why it's actually not a formula pulling out of that sheet, but those are calculated separately based on the withdrawals we do from the GP relayer. So the amounts on the overview are 100% correct. And if you go and look at the actual individual transactions, because we retrieve this data on chain, this is the minimum DXD, but as Chris says, sometimes it fills at better prices. So we actually bought back slightly more than if you were to add this up. But the overview sheet is 100% correct. So always good to keep an eye on that.
A great overview, Chris. And I think the point about DXD liquidity, that's sort of been a long-standing complaint. For a long time, there really wasn't very good DXD liquidity. I think it's gotten a bit better with the launch of the Swapper token, but it is a bit fragmented across Arbitrum, mainnet, and Gnosis chain. For those who are in the market chatter chat, I actually started kind of just an informal poll there to see what people in the Discord were thinking of where it would be nice to have concentrated liquidity. And I like those two kind of ideas you mentioned, like potentially incentivizing long-term commitment to DXD liquidity through some kind of a farming campaign with lockups, maybe using Carrot. And, there is that question of providing liquidity from the DXdao treasury, which DXdao could easily do, right? There's more than enough capital and DXD in the treasury, but what had held that back in the past was not wanting to provide liquidity at prices below what it had been sold on the bonding curve. Now the bonding curve was denominated in ETH, and the top price was around 1 Ether, right? And so the reason to not provide liquidity from the treasury is that if DXDAO's treasury is market making, it's equivalent to potentially selling DXD, right? Like if it provides liquidity at 0.2 ETH and the price goes up, more DXD is going into circulation from the treasury. And so the idea was, well, we don't really want to do that at prices below what it had been previously sold, but that's denominating in ETH. And it's kind of been a long time. So it might be time to revisit that conversation as well, but perhaps that could be compared versus farming, right? Because maybe that's a more effective way to do it without having to introduce more DXD into circulation. Anyways, it's important conversation. I expect there'll be lots of opinions, but I think it is time to take a closer look at that because not only do all of the DXD holders, participants here want deeper liquidity, it's important for onboarding. Not only to have like cheap transactions available for smaller holders, but having a good depth of liquidity, I think, is a very important feature for onboarding potentially like larger holders because they're going to look for lower slippage.
Yeah, great discussions here. Thank you, everybody. Leaving the door open for any final questions or comments from our end. Nothing was left with me beyond what we kind of touched on already. Interesting question here. It says related, but we are kind of transitioning to a new topic. So it'd be good to address this now, I think. Tom FR has a couple of questions in the chat. One being why Gnosis chose SushiSwap for liquidity over Swapper. Maybe we can start with that and just go in order. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we have an answer for that, but maybe someone would be more intimate with the reasoning, Sky or maybe John.
I don't have insight into why Sushi was chosen over Swapper. I am familiar with the proposal we had for stake rewards, and I don't know, Sky, if you have any thoughts or updates on that.
Yeah, so I don't know specifically to this actual liquidity farming, but Gnosis in general, like via the merger, has continued a handful of programs that they had in place. Also, like for example, Curve. I think there's Gnosis GNO incentives on Curve, so we have an ongoing discussion around seeking out some rewards for what was going to be Swapper incentives. We are that proposal, which was approved by the DXdao community but was never paid, is now in like limbo. And when we spoke with Martin Koppelman specifically and some people from the Gnosis team, they were kind of thinking that a new proposal like that responsibility was on the DXdao team, which no longer is assuming that responsibility. And so any new proposal asking for GNO rewards would have to be part of a larger ask to the GNO community. And so figuring out what that ask would be, what those rewards would be used for, is an like open question. There is signal that like the Gnosis chain community has a goal to have decent sized liquidity for what Martin said was like the top 50 ERC20 tokens on mainnet. Also, so that like someone could come and trade $10,000 of liquidity or a $10,000 trade for those tokens on Gnosis chain. He said like for dollar stables, there's like there were $80 million of liquidity in dollar stable pools on Curve. That like that is plenty sufficient, and he doesn't see anyone doing trades anywhere close to the size that's available there. And so Gnosis DAO or potentially the ecosystem fund for additional rewards to layer on top of any rewards that DXdao wants to provide. And so yeah, there's quite a few moving parts. The sushi swap getting incentives, I think, is something that partly carried over from the XDAI, from when it was just XDAI chain. But yeah, specifically like why they've made these decisions to like incentivize Curve and Sushi. I think they're willing to incentivize lots of things that bring users and attention to Gnosis chain at this point. So
I would just add that I feel confident that Swapper can compete and beat Sushi Swap on Gnosis chain. We've got a lot of things that we're doing and kind of pushing forward. We've been there for a while. Sushi Swap is not paying attention to Gnosis chain. Martin himself said that he doesn't think farming incentives bring LPs. So I feel kind of pretty confident that Swapper kind of will be the dominant DEX on Gnosis chain, that we can kind of plow forward with that, regardless of what Gnosis chain is doing with Gnosis is doing with the incentives.
So, and we do have a couple more questions on the Gnosis topic from Tom as well. Two being, can we use the same treasury management as them? Seems effective with 1.5 million a week. I'm not sure. I'm not intimately familiar with the treasury management strategy. I don't know, Dave, if you might be.
Yeah, I'm not specifically aware of how they do it. I know we've had some informal chats about it with them. Of course, the amount is highly correlated, 100% correlated to the amount of capital you have as well, right? So I think they are yielding with like multiple times the amount of what we have in the treasury. So I don't think those amounts are really realistic for us. And, I think, but definitely worth looking into what they're doing. And, one advantage, I guess, some companies like these also have is that they're also companies, right? So they can access a lot more opportunities, which are much more difficult to do in a decentralized way. But if there is some more information out there, it's definitely worth taking a look to see what they're doing, and if we can replicate some of that, of course, it definitely makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and a couple things from me on the Sushi Swap. I was just actually looking at Sushi Swap. I had not realized that GNO rewards were active on Sushi, and I just posted, there's a forum thread in the Gnosis DAO forum about that. There's also a thread about the stake reward. So, we had a proposal for stake rewards from the XDAI ecosystem fund that had passed. Now, I don't think they were like formally a DAO, so it's not necessarily binding, but when the merger happened, those got held back. Sky was just talking about this. And so I would say it is disappointing to me to see rewards being given to Sushi Swap when kind of pre-agreed rewards for stake are not being followed through. And I'm definitely going to take a closer look at these threads on the forum, and I would encourage all of the community members here to take a look as well and kind of voice your opinion, right? I think hopefully Gnosis DAO will be responsive to kind of community voices on Gnosis chain. And like Powers said, I don't think Sushi really has much of a focus on Gnosis chain, and they're spread fairly thin, plus, additional drama they've been experiencing, and I think has them kind of distracted for different reasons. So that's that. I think we should push to get some GNO rewards, because I think it's only fair. We're very committed to the chain. We've launched a new product in Carrot. We've got Omen, Swapper, the governance, et cetera, right? So I think it would only be sensible for there to also be GNO rewards on Swapper. But even not, I think we're in a good spot. And like Power said, I'm pretty optimistic as well that Swapper can be one of, if not the main DEX on Gnosis chain. As to the treasury management aspect, the Gnosis treasury is a powerhouse, and I think it's just getting some attention now on Twitter. You saw that Carpat Key tweet. I'm going to post that here as well. So they've got a lot of capital. Now, Gnosis raised around 200,000 ETH in their initial ICO back in 2017. They've done a remarkable job managing it all along, right? They put aside like a good amount of runway. They grew a significant team and a significant amount of runway in stablecoins initially, kept a good amount of their ETH, and they've managed it very well all along. I believe they actually have this, I think it's this Carpack Key thing that is a separate entity now. It's a small team. I think there's about 5 people that are dedicated to doing this treasury management. And like it was mentioned, it's like $200,000 a day is being generated, which is truly amazing. And it puts Gnosis in this position where they actually don't even know what to do with their problem is more like, what do they do with all this money? And obviously, like with DXdao having a large treasury, it would also be interesting if we could achieve something similar. And our hat's mentioning Marcelo there, right? He's actually the lead, I believe, the lead for this group that is managing the Gnosis treasury. And I actually met Marcelo in Lisbon when we were there. And so, they were talking about, we had a conversation about their treasury yield and how it's $200,000 a day, which, I was kind of, I guess, not surprised, but it's still kind of shocking even so. And so I asked him, I was like, hey, how can DXdao do this? And, I was like, we need to be able to do it in a trustless way. And his response to that was, well, it's impossible. Like, we do 200 transactions per day. They're actively yield farming, and they're managing it in, I think, a relatively centralized way. Now, I'm not sure if they've made some adjustments. Like, I got to catch up on this Twitter thread and stuff, because I know they mentioned in the Twitter thread that they have a commitment to trust minimization, right? But still, I think they are. I think Gnosis DAO in general is more trusted, more centralized in terms of the execution of things than DXdao is, right? They have legal entities kind of behind things. They got multi-sigs. Like, yes, they have the Snap Safe, but if you look at kind of the mechanics of how Snap Safe works, I think I think their philosophy is decentralized, and I trust that they are moving in the right direction, but ultimately the control is coming from the multi-sig and stuff. So I think, unfortunately, it's actually we're not in the best position to pursue the type of treasury yield that they're getting, not without making some significant trust assumptions. So that could be possible. I'm curious to hear more community voices on that. I mean, maybe some percentage of the treasury could go to trusted parties to do something like this, even potentially to Carpack Key. We've had conversations with other market makers about this. And, I think that's kind of the bigger question, right? Is what kind of trust assumptions are we working with? I do think we can do more. Like I said, they have a team of 5 fully dedicated to it. And so that's a lot of firepower compared to putting all the responsibility on Dave here to do the management of the treasury, and we have the hardcore trust assumption kind of requirements. But I do think we still can do more. Like I mentioned liquidity earlier, I think we can do some, we're doing the staked ETH, so we can definitely improve the yield on the treasury. I think it's going to be difficult for us to come to par with something like Gnosis, though. Sorry, that was a bit long-winded, but there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, definitely agree. I personally think for DXdao, a more passive approach makes more sense, right? If we want to keep it trustless, it's just inherently difficult to do an active management like centralized companies can do due to the need of passing proposals, etc. But of course, there could also be in the future some capital allocated to some more centralized entity based on trust. But yeah, totally agree with John. Yeah.
Awesome. And the last question here is how exactly the relationship between DXdao and Gnosis has evolved since the conception of DXdao. There's a couple of DXdao historians on the stage here.
I guess I should probably talk to that one too. And yeah, there's a long history, so I don't know what detail you want me to go into it, but I'll try to keep it brief here. And if we want, we could maybe even revisit this in the future if you wanted to do an in-depth history of Gnosis and DXdao. I mean, myself, I've known Gnosis since DevCon 3. I met Martin and Stefan there, so I've known them for, I guess, 4 years now. And personally, I still have a great relationship with those guys. They do a lot, and they were instrumental to launching DXdao, right? So Gnosis, along with DAOstack, launched DXdao and then stepped back and kind of let it go. They gave Dutch exchange to DXdao and then kind of let it fly on its own. That was in mid-2019. Initially, the activity around DutchX died off. There wasn't really much activity in DXdao. Of course, it was also the depth of the bear market, and there was no capital in the DAO, right? So at that point, it was really just a small group of us that wanted to keep it going and were interested in the mission, and were focused on launching a capital raise, right, with DXD, which happened eventually in May of 2020. So kind of while that group was working on the capital raise aspects, Gnosis was not involved. They had stepped back. They didn't want, they weren't part of DXdao. But things kind of came together again in 2020 because there was some activity in the kind of small active part of the DXdao community. The DXD fundraiser was picking up, and Gnosis around that same time. And you could actually go back to ECC 2019. There's an interesting talk by Stefan about Omen, because they had actually been working on the conditional token framework, which is the backbone for the Omen prediction market platform. And they had funded an independent shop, I'm blanking on their name right now, out of Argentina, to work on a front end, but we're looking for some way to actually get this thing launched. And that's where DXdao kind of came into the picture with Omen. DXdao launched the front end and really started to own the product of Omen itself, even though the smart contracts had been deployed by Gnosis. And something similar actually happened around the same time with Mesa being the front end product for Gnosis Protocol v1, right? So DXdao started launching a couple of front ends that Gnosis had no interest in actually deploying themselves, right? Even though, and they were leveraging Gnosis's backend. And we had a very, very close relationship through all of that at the time. And I think it was actually even a little bit confusing and frustrating for DXdao, because oftentimes, media and people just in the community would get confused about whether Omen was a Gnosis product or a DXdao product. And there was this sort of joint aspect, like I said, where they had built the smart contracts, but Omen from the beginning 100% has been a DXdao product. And that kind of culminated in, there was some talks about a year ago about a potential joint venture around Omen with Gnosis DAO, and they had made a proposal, and there was some discussion in the thread. My opinion on that proposal is they were asking for kind of a bit too much without showing really how they were going to be contributing. Their lead dev on the smart contracts had left. They didn't seem to be investing any resources, even though they have tremendous resources. They didn't seem to be investing in prediction markets anymore. Their focus was on the safe and on cow swap and Gnosis Protocol v2 and a couple of other things. And so, from what we could see, they didn't seem to really be backing up their kind of ask for 50. I think they wanted 50% of Omen, and that deal kind of fell through. And I actually think that's healthy for DXdao. I think, it's good for DXdao to operate kind of, to demonstrate that it's independent of Gnosis, kind of to get some distance there and kind of fly on its own. But I think there's lots of opportunities for future collaboration. And I think fundamentally the connections are still good there, even though, some deals haven't worked out. So that's hopefully a brief overview. We could get, I mean, there's a lot more context. We could, I could talk about this for hours probably, but I would just say that, Gnosis has a lot going on. They're good people. They're very focused on decentralization. They have an enormous amount of capital, and they're looking for things to do with that. So, I mean, that's driving a lot of their behavior, why they, I think, acquired a whole blockchain, right? Like, it's what do you do when you have $1 billion and you got to figure out what to do with it. I think there's tons of opportunity, though, in the future for us to potentially collaborate and do stuff together. And yeah, that's all I'll say on that, I guess.
Just seeing Nylon, I believe, has joined us on the stage. Do you have something to add to that? I think we're not hearing you.
Maybe now? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that we should have like a series of like episodes with like the DXdao origin story, because it's really interesting and really gets you to understand like why this is an actually decentralized organization. So yeah, just wanted to comment that, and it took too long because couldn't stop, but yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for those. We do have a bit of other things on the agenda to chat with. Here, I am going to give a quicker call of attention to the Discord rep boost. I think most people here in this call are familiar, but those that aren't, Q4 of 2021, we've completed the snapshot for the Discord rep boost. So if you're in the level structure, which you can find in the roles channel up in the server area, you'll be eligible for a certain amount of rep, which I will leave a link to the channel here as well for more context. Just because we're running a bit thin, I don't want to take up too much time here. But please take a look. If you're in this call, chances are you are eligible for some rep. Once the signal proposal passes, of course, there'll be a guide to claim that rep, and I'll be reaching out to everyone individually to do so. Let's see here. We do have a short amount of time. Sky, we want to chat a bit about the Carrot campaign retrospective and the Atlantis World partnership. Maybe a little bit briefer today, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I can just talk about those quickly. So yeah, both. So the Carrot retrospective is kind of a look back at the two Carrot campaigns that DXdao did for itself, the first two Carrot campaigns ever. One was based on like a price of swapper token, and one was based on a TVL of a swapper pool using a range. There are some kind of questions like raised. It's hard to always come up with the exact answer of why things behave the way they did, but in the token price scenario, with a swapper token has generally been going down on a regular basis. Like giving a small incentive to a small group of people on one specific pool, like to influence the price of a token in a market where the token price is going down, with like not a very big financial incentive. I think it's kind of just set up. It was a little bit set up for failing, and there's some outcomes to that. Is like incentives. So a system that allows you to have financial incentives to drive behavior of a crowd. I think we're learning that the financial incentive has to be big enough to drive that behavior, and has to be widespread across enough participants that have the ability to drive that behavior. And so one maybe idea would be, instead of, this was a very narrow focused campaign, and so if we were going to do something around similar to that, we may have to try expanding it to a much wider audience. That could include farmers, but that could also, as Chris has mentioned in the post as well, like airdropping to people that can actually influence that. And so whether that's TVL or the price of a token, really pinpointing who should have their hands on these Carrot tokens, these incentive tokens, and is the financial incentive big enough to drive that behavior. And so unfortunately, the dollar amounts that like were put into the carrot campaigns were as this initial trial were probably not very big and not big enough to drive an actual incentive of a wider community. And so we may have to try figuring out how to really increase the actual like financial collateral that's going to be driving these behaviors. The second one with the TVL, like having a range seems to be probably a better technique to use. At least like with a range, as long as you end up in the range, there is some payout. So the second carry campaign paid out, I think it was 31% of the collateral. If the financial incentive was bigger, maybe there would be more reason for that TVL to be higher. There were some other factors such as like moving your TVL from across chains to XDAI, whether it's from Arbitrum through mainnet to XDAI or from mainnet to XDAI. There's a big expense. There's a withdrawal period on Arbitrum. So there's a bunch of factors like that are making it harder to drive to move your value and capital around chains in order to, in theory, increase or achieve a higher outcome for this type of incentive with Carrot. But I guess the overall conclusion is we should dog food Carrot more ourselves. There were some problems. Agave used Carrot as well. There were some problems there. We should try a bunch of different types of use of Carrot. We should probably try the airdrop technique. One idea was to airdrop to people that participated in Carrot. Another idea is to identify wallets and people out there that these Carrots would mean a lot to them and actually change their behavior. And so pinpointing those and figure out how to get the proper Carrots with the proper incentives in the hands of those people is like another goal. And so any ideas that people have, please feel free to reach out or put them in the forum post. But I think we really need to move ahead with some more trials with Carrot. We can tweak what we've learned, but we should keep experimenting, and we should probably increase the value that we're putting into the Carrot campaigns in order to actually see if we have like a true financial incentive to change behavior of people. So that's the overall conclusions of like those two Carrot campaigns. I think we need to do another retrospective specifically on the Agave one. Figure out what went wrong, figure out how to fix it, and figure out how we can help them move forward with that. And then eventually we'll have a few hopefully positive use cases that we could then market and share around wider communities so that other projects could kind of replicate or get involved with Carrots as well. And so figuring out the front end and how to create Carrot campaigns easier and more effectively is also an important piece of the puzzle. But that's overall Carrot summary.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sky. And we'll move right on here to the Atlantis effort and the active proposal on DXDAO's governance base.
Yeah, so this has been being talked about for a long time. Currently, DXDAO doesn't have a presence in the metaverse, really, or I mean, unless you count Jitsi and Discord, but like having something more in the blockchain metaverse worlds. Atlantis World is a 2D metaverse project that's gotten the attention of quite a few projects in the DeFi space, has gotten funding from a number of the big ones, and so this grant was to kind of support and become a part of the Atlantis World ecosystem. It is a 2D metaverse. It would be an experience that people can do. Integrating, there's a bunch of deliverables that are part of this, like integrating a hub for DXDAO in this world, having our products integrated so that people can discover our products easier if they're a part of this world. So there's part of the grant is an actual grant in XDAI, and then there was an intent to use Carrots actually as a portion of the grant. So for like $10,000, have those to have that portion of the grant based on the deliverables being achieved, and if they are achieved, then those carrots are redeemable for the additional $10,000. So it gives the project and their team an incentive to really deliver on what's part of this proposal. And so that's probably a pretty unique, there are incentive-based clauses in many contracts over, for business deals and things, but doing it using carrots in a pretty trustless way. I guess it depends on who we assign the oracle to be. Ideally, the oracle is kind of a third-party judge of whether the deliverables are met. Wouldn't want it to be like the Atlantis World team or the DXdao team specifically, but as long as the whatever oracle it is has the ability to measure and judge whether the deliverables are met, the additional amounts paid out. And so that's pretty cool to have this third-party oracle trustless incentive included in a deal where there's a commitment from both parties. And so that proposal is live up on XDAI DX Vote. You can check it out. Vote on it, and then hopefully as this passes, we'll also get closer to their team, and we will have like a regular ongoing dialogue, and we can form what they're working on, and also learn more about how DXdao can kind of grow and get awareness in the metaverse space. So that's the summary of that proposal. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time, Sky. I do have one more quick thing, fun thing about POAPs to talk about at the end here. But before we get to that, I do believe we have Kappa Joseph from HeroDAO here that was looking to speak. So Nathan tells me.
Hi, friends.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'll be quick because I know we're kind of at the end of the time here. But HeroDAO is a medical cartel associated DAO that spun up last spring, so almost a year ago. And we have built the first community-owned superhero franchise. We're launching our first real physical comic book in a few weeks. And there's going to be a token airdrop to go along with that called Moonrock. And it lives on mainnet and XDAI. And we're going to use Swapper as our AMM of choice on XDAI. And I really love carrot farming. I've been carrot farming all over the place. So as one of the sidekicks for HeroDAO, I was hoping that we could set up some more carrots. And I think that it would be really cool for DXdao to have more carrot projects and stuff that aren't directly affiliated with the DXdao ecosystem. And one of the reasons possibly that Gnosis kind of picked Sushi Swap over Swapper, which I think is really kind of disrespectful, to be honest, for everything that DXdao has done for, XDAI ecosystem. But if it seems like all the projects using Swapper and DXdao products are also just like incestuously, in a good way, like spun up from DXdao. Looking from the outside, it can seem very like what things outside of just the DXdao ecosystem are actually using your tools, and make it seem less favorable to launch incentives there. So to kind of bootstrap that, HeroDAO wants to be, a guinea pig a little bit for opening up Carrot to other stuff. So I talked to Sky about this one-on-one a bit ago. But yeah, I hope you all will check out HeroDAO.org, and we're building some cool things too. And hopefully we can team up a little bit.
Well, that sounds super cool.
Yeah. So if you have any questions about that, just for fun, I'm happy to talk more about it.
Yeah, I think this is super, super awesome. We do have one question in chat, and it's how can we get a comic if we wanted one?
Yeah, so to get a comic, you're going to have to buy Moonrock token, which is kind of like tickets at Chuck E. Cheese, and use that to redeem fabulous prizes from the DAO, including comic books and tickets to the movie that we're producing and all kinds of cool stuff.
And if you're also interested highly, you can join HeroDAO, right?
That too. You can also join HeroDAO. And we're working out, if you're really into designing tokenomics and stuff, we're working out how to redeem Moonrock tokens and stuff for shares in the DAO. And once Moloch version 3 launches in February, we'll have some more tools for that and play around with that stuff. So if those are the kind of things that you're interested in, we also just are launching a product to help manage mainnet stuff from the DAO that runs on XDAI. So we have a little smart contract library that we're building for that. If that's something you're interested in, we're doing a lot of cool little things. Even beyond just having really cool comic books and stuff. The first comic book is for Moon Girl, so I think the meme potential alone will be awesome. And we have a bunch of professional comic writers and artists and stuff working on that. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, super, super awesome here. Leaving the door open for any kind of final questions. We are a bit over time.
Yeah.
Would love to speak a little further, of course.
But yeah, come find me. Come join the HeroDAO Discord and HeroDAO.org, and we can learn more and have fun with us. But I won't take up any more time. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, it would be fantastic if you could drop the links in the chat as well.
Yeah, I will do that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Excellent. So as I mentioned, a bit over time here, there is just one last thing to call attention to. We've been chatting about the DXdao holiday POAPs for a couple of weeks now, and there was a couple of development-related kind of hitches with that, but we do have the snapshot list as of this morning, actually. So those of you here are first to hear, of course. It will be presumably within the next couple of days. There will be an announcement of the DXdao holiday POAP. So if you were around for the holidays, held DXD during the holiday period, you'll have a little memorabilia of the cool branding that we had within that time, which is hopefully very exciting. More information, including how exactly to claim those, will be sharing soon. Cool, and I think that's it for me. I'm not sure if there's anyone else here that has any final comments, questions. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, everyone, for showing up today. Look forward to another DXdao Community Call next week, same time, same place. Those of you that aren't aware, there's an event tab at the top left of Discord. You can use that to kind of track events and calls. Haven't made a formal kind of call to that, but pay attention to that as well. Thank you so much, everyone, and take care.
Thanks, Keenan. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Keenan. Bye, everyone.